I'd like to welcome everyone to ZEDEDA's Transform Conference. Thank you to our amazing panel today. We thank you for joining us. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you everyone who's joining the actual session. My name's Lisa. I'll be your chaperone for the day. Please let me know if you have any questions. There's a chat section on the right-hand side of your screen. Please use that to put your questions in. And if you have any issues, feel free to ping me directly and I will jump on them. And with that, I would like to hand it off to Daniel Newman of Futurium to take it from there.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it. Great chaperoning. We're all very excited to be here at the ZEDEDA Transform event. And for those that do not know me, my name is Daniel Newman. I am the founding partner and principal analyst at Futurium Research. And I'm excited. I got a great panel here of experts. And so as an analyst that commonly plays that role, today I'm excited to play a little bit of a different role and sort of stir up a conversation with this tremendous group. Now, first and foremost, in order to set the tone, I do think it'd be great if each of you could take 30 seconds and do a quick introduction. Don't need to go deep into your history, but we would like for everyone that's watching just to get a little bit of context about what you all do each day and what your expertise is. And Ginger, as the lady on the panel, I'd like to let you go first.
Hi, I'm Ginger Smith. I'm with Honeywell. I specifically work at Honeywell Connected Enterprise, and I'm a leader in the strategic group. So one of the ones you may have recently heard about is the Honeywell and SAP partnership that launched in June.
Thanks, Ginger. Mike?
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Farian. I'm with Advantech, and I'm the CTO of the IoT Solutions Group here in North America. So what my team does is we work very closely with our customers and partners in their IoT, industrial IoT, digital transformation type projects. And you to say it's been shifting from working exclusively with a lot of first IT departments and then OT departments, and now we're starting to see IT and OT in the room together. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Absolutely, Mike. Welcome. Gary.
I'm Gary Minchell. I blog at themanufacturingconnection.com. I'm an independent analyst and an influencer, and I cover the industrial side of IT, IoT, OT, kind of all of the above.
Thanks for joining us, Gary. Travis?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. My name is Travis Cox. I'm the co-director of sales engineering for Inductive Automation. We are a software provider. We provide Ignition, which is HMI SCADA MES software. I've been with them since the very beginning, since 2003. Currently, our team, we are the solution architect team. So we help our customers and partners with setting up best practices and setting up architectures, as well as answering any technical questions they may have. And of course, we work very closely with both the OT folks and the IT folks here.
Excellent. And Brian, last but not least.
Thank you. Brian Turner with Buildings IoT. We actually own 3 different businesses primarily focused in the buildings space. And we have managed IT services, managed OT services, and we also develop and deliver software to integrate the different systems that go into building on both sides of IT and OT.
Absolutely. Well, what a panel we have here today. Again, thank you all for joining me and allowing me the great honor of moderating this discussion. I do say with 5 on a panel and an online audience, I may or may not get to everyone for every topic. Do not take it personally. I want to keep the conversation moving. We might be able to get forth and then come back to a topic. You guys have such a diverse set of expertise and skills. I want to get everybody's opinion, but like I said, nobody likes a panel that's just going up and down the aisle for 35, 40 straight minutes. So I want to create some level of an intense discussion. And there's nothing more intense than when you take 2 groups that historically work together like fire and gas or water. I'm not sure which one's a better metaphor in this case. And tell them, hey, let's work strategically in together in order to drive our business forward and be able to collect data, utilize it to drive major business decisions. Now, a couple years ago, my firm did a research study on IT/OT, and at that time, IT versus OT found there was a massive gap between those 2 groups. Having said that, that was 2 years ago. And where I'd love to start today is just sort of, you guys are all having conversations. Some of you are on the implementation, some of you on the technology development side, some of you on the software side. But how have you seen this IT OT progression work over the last, let's say 2 years? Where are we today? Are you feeling good about it? Is there still are we still hitting a lot of resistance? And Brian, since I made you go last on the introduction, I'm going to let you jump in first on the topic.
Okay, yeah, this is a topic that, we deal with every single day. I would say today we're, probably, if we liken to a baseball game, maybe we're in the fourth inning, maybe the fifth inning. IT has definitely come a long way in the last 2 years at recognizing that OT is serious. It's adding more devices than they ever imagined would happen in the last couple of years. And they've also recognized that they've got to figure out how to secure and manage these devices. And they've got to figure out how to deal with a bunch of third-party vendors that need to also work with and manage these devices across organizations within their full organization they haven't typically had to interface with. And so I think we've seen a lot of good signs, but we're still not at the end of it. It's not a smooth running machine at this point, but definitely tracking the right direction.
Yeah, Mike, based upon your role and responsibility, it really sounds like this whole group sort of originates out of OT a little bit more, right? Would any of you, I think maybe it's Travis, you said that you sort of feel like you came a little more from the IT side. I'm going to have Mike and I want to bounce to you, but a lot of OT perspective here, Mike, but do you feel that, the IT team is becoming more receptive?
Yeah, we're definitely making progress. And I agree with Brian, it's a continuum. You don't have to go too many years back. And I felt like coming from the OT side of things and edge compute and connectivity, we were getting calls from people we never got calls from before. And there were IT companies, enterprise companies, starting to figure out how do we make that step into OT. And we'd meet with them and there's none of their own OT people in the room. We've definitely come a long way now where rarely do I go to a meeting now that's just OT and they're trying to keep it hush-hush from IT or vice versa. They're at least all in the room together. Sometimes it's a dysfunctional relationship more so than others, but we're definitely making real headway there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ginger, you're at Honeywell, and it sort of made me laugh because the other day when we were doing the pre-briefing, Honeywell's a really large company, obviously a lot of employees. And when, Jason from ZEDEDA told us that joke about, the IT department complaining about how Dell brings all the employees. Well, Honeywell's a big company bringing all the employees, and they found out it was actually the OT group when IT found out it was actually the OT team from their own company. But you guys, are a really large player. You're in all kinds of businesses. And, when you made the decision that Honeywell was going to really make a commitment, HCE, building out the whole stack, the company must have seen just massive potential in this area. But, from a standpoint of recognition, big as Honeywell is, people kind of looking at, well, you're not Cisco or IBM or Microsoft. How has that shifted as you've been in this role? Are you starting to see people really bringing in and embracing Honeywell and seeing that it is in fact a tech organization? Yeah,
absolutely. I really do think we're in an OT revolution right now. I think IT gave way to that. With the validation of Honeywell Forge, which launched roughly a year ago, we've started to prove out in the market what was born from IT and OT together. So it's this cloud platform. It bridges IT, it bridges the process data. Because of Forge, because of the success we've had before us of the new SAP and Honeywell partnership, we're having people across both sides come to us and be like, okay, well, let's talk about this IT problem, or let's talk about this general tech problem. And now the conversation is more about digital transformation rather than one side of the house or the other.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And don't give away all the technology, by the way, because I've got a question for you that we're going to talk a little bit about hybrid cloud and where things are heading, because I've spent some time analyzing the stack that you've built. I want to get Travis and Gary intertwined into the conversation here. And Travis, like I said, I sort of remembered your introduction and when we talked the other day, and you sort of, maybe alluding to being a little more from an IT background here, the acceptance, at least from our early research, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, our early research basically said, IT was like poo-poo, if we have to, we'll get involved. That has to be changing. I mean, there's no way these two groups can function that way anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I definitely, my background is more of IT for sure. And when I came to work with, so the owner of Inductive Automation, he ran an integration business. And so he's very much rooted in OT and was just frustrated with, proprietary nature of the software or licensing mechanisms, whatever it was, and really wanted to leverage IT standards and be able to talk that language that IT can understand. And so our roots would really kind of bridge the gap between OT and IT, were to leverage IT standards, bring it in, for example, leveraging a SQL database at the beginning to put data in there. And so if we look at today, the technology is available, and it's on the OT side that leverages these IT standards that talk that same language, allow the two sides to work a lot better together than they used to. Because before it was seen as completely two different, domains, and we just don't touch each other, right? But now the tools that are being used on the OT side are speaking the same protocols and languages and using standards that IT is using and can easily support and secure, and can be a part of their strategy, especially a cybersecurity strategy, as they look to more digital transformation.
Yeah, it's a really interesting construct, because the data center at the edge and the data center in on-prem and the data center in the cloud actually are comprised of the same components, right? You've got compute, you've got storage, you've got networking, and now it's hyper-converged through software, right? And for some reason, though, there was this perspective of like, what's in this room behind the little key fob is special and it's IT, and your little box out in the middle of a cornfield somewhere is just some, it's an experiment out in there. But we've realized that's not it. I mean, as we kind of look at the narrative of digital transformation, you look at connected vehicles, you look at connected cities and smart cities and retail, and you start looking at connected farms. And then, of course, Gary, you're manufacturing, right? That's the title of your blog, and you've been your focus for so long. But the components, what builds this edge ecosystem, doesn't really change once it leaves the data center. It's just a different set of hardware with maybe some specific builds to be more friendly in, say, a harsher environment. Gary, you and I have seen each other for years at different events for different manufacturers, and I've tracked what you've been up to. How have you been seeing the evolution here take place? In the past couple of years, you were really dialed into the manufacturing side, working on almost exclusively on the OT side, but I'm seeing you showing up more and more at IT, in IT companies, IT events. So I imagine you're starting to really feel that momentum picking up of the convergence of these two groups.
Oh, no doubt about it. And I do go to about as many IT events as OT anymore.
Which is zero for all of us now, right?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Nowhere.
Hey, the good side of all this virtual is I attended 3 conferences, and typically they would have been scattered all over the country. So there's a good side. But, years ago, manufacturing engineers discovered they needed things like servers because they were getting so much data. They started putting networks in, and then our networks went to Ethernet, which is the same Ethernet as in the cabinet upstairs and all that sort of thing. And the management at one point discovered what was going on in that back room. And so they brought in a group of people called manufacturing IT, and they helped the controls engineers do their thing. And then management laid them all off because they said, well, you did your job. And then they discovered that was a mistake. So that's part of our convergence, is they sort of brought this idea of manufacturing IT back. And what I'm finding now, this is very interesting, is that the far-sighted managers, like a plant manager that really wants to get his team together, they've started putting the operations technology lead and the IT lead in offices side by side. And if nothing else, they have to see each other every day. But with the right management and teamwork, they start talking and they have joint meetings. And I've visited some plants that are really cool that way, where they bring all of it together and they don't view it anymore as butting heads, or you don't understand real time and you don't understand security, and and all those old arguments. They're going away in a lot of companies. They'll be around for a while. Humans always bicker, but you know how it goes. But it's been a really great evolution to see, and I think it'll make for much better plants in the future.
Yeah, I think the convergence has been a little bit more, it's happened a little more organically than we even want to admit, because as each of these industries has taken shape, I always say nobody invests in tech for tech's sake. There's always a business purpose behind it. So when you hear about post COVID-19 and you're seeing machine vision being deployed into a retail environment so that people can keep their social distance, it's an IoT build. It's built on a combination of a machine that's, doing video, that's collecting analytics, that's being able to provide in-use data, and then being able to send it back and analyze it and provide real-time notifications to a storefront manager. I mean, this is how this technology is coming together and being used. It's solving a business problem. It's not a technology problem. It's a business problem. And so, as we talk about this convergence, what I see in almost all cases is people can understand the theory, but it's always best served if you can actually hear some anecdotes and some stories. And so, we've got some practitioners out here in the group, Mike, Brian, Travis, any of you, I'd like to kind of give it an open, but I would love to hear a few stories of maybe where either OT has sort of leaned to IT or IT has sort of finally acknowledged and pulled in OT and been able to overcome a hurdle. Any of you want to volunteer to go first?
So I'll throw a quick story out that is, I think, indicative of the kind of waste that has actually gone on because of the lack of convergence and the lack of communications. And you were just talking about, counting people potentially with cameras. And so you have a lot of people that are interested in, not just for COVID-19, but prior to COVID-19, people were interested in how many people were going or what the football traffic looked like. And to a large extent, that was a marketing play because they wanted to be able to present the type of marketing information to drive higher revenues for retail stores or restaurants, or maybe they were going to start sending ads somewhere. And because it was marketing, and marketing rolled up mostly to the IT group, and that was part of that, OT never got access to that data. And getting access to that data was like pulling teeth. And so what happened is you now had OT installing counting technology right on top of the technology that was already there. And so we just have one. Now we got multiple systems to manage. And so this convergence is doing way more than just organizing a physical architecture. It's really bringing these businesses together and hopefully getting, this convergence turns into a lot more data-driven decisions that can be made, but they're made holistically instead of in a silo.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll say I could tell another story here that I think is quite relevant to what you were just saying there, Daniel, in terms of business value. I mean, that is a big driver, right, to why companies are exploring different options. And one of the things is, I mean, we're seeing the expansion of data and more sensors and all of that with digital transformation, because the more data we have, the better insight we can get out of that data. There's a lot of possibility, a lot of opportunity, especially with leveraging cloud to do things like machine learning analytics, right? To take that to the next level. If you're going to do predictive maintenance, or you can tune your process properly by creating models, right? Those have huge business values out of them. And a lot of that is driven from IT because let's face it, they're the ones that understand this technology, right? They know how to work with the cloud and bring this down to the business. And so, of course, they can't do that alone. They don't. You can't just draw a single line down to OT and says, "Oh, we're going to get all your data. It's going to be simple. It's going to be easy." Well, we all know that world is complex, right? There's lots of legacy domain knowledge out there, lots of proprietary PLCs with their polling protocols. It's going to take OT and their knowledge to be able to transform the architecture on the OT side in order to really supply that data properly to the IT. And we always say that it's got to start with OT first, right? And I think there's a big, we're now seeing even IT saying, look, it's got to happen there. We've got to transform. We got to make the data more accessible, get access to more of that data. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, if it's brand new things we're putting in place or if it's brownfield we've had for the last 15, 20 years. If we can get it to the right architecture, we can get it, to decouple kind of our architecture, get it to multiple consumers of that data. we then can start leveraging those possibilities of those opportunities. And, IT really has a lot of the bandwidth. They have the capital, they have the projects, and it's just the two worlds really have to work together to do it, and do it effectively and do it securely. I think that's one of the most important things. You can't really have shadow IT, right, anymore. It's too easy to have some issues, security issues with that. So I think that's just a really good story, right? That's one of the big drivers for making these two, especially recently, really start looking at working together. And Gary, what you're saying there, we see that too. The best companies who are really successful are the ones where they're taking the OT manager, IT managers, put them together, and all decisions are being made between both of them, not one side or the other.
Yeah, and I'm momentarily, you mentioned something, Travis, about how it starts with OT and scales with IT, and I do want to get to that. And Ginger and Gary, you might want to start getting your thoughts together, because I'm going to be coming to you for that particular one. But Mike, I did start this question mentioning the three that are a little more on the and customer interaction practitioner side, and wanting to maybe just customer stories. Mike, anything that you've seen as you're in the deployment side of this that's been interesting as OT and IT have started converging?
Yeah, and I think the big thing, it's a study in change management. So whatever change management program you subscribe to, what I've seen, the most successful customers and partners are the ones that have faced a real crisis. And that real crisis is what's gotten them aligned. In some cases, that was actually a large customer of Travis's, a tier one automotive manufacturer who couldn't meet end customer requirements with their legacy equipment. Decided that they built a new plant, say to this greenfield plant, let's make this work there, then we'll roll it out. Well, they tried to implement this digital transformation system in the new plant as they built it. The first pass failed, the second pass failed. Now the plant's coming online and they couldn't actually bring it up to speed because of the systems themselves. That's what created enough of a crisis that said, now we had CEO, executive attention, pulled the departments together, said, look, we have a common enemy here. We got to overcome all the preconceived notions. It doesn't matter that this person's not on the approved vendor list. We have to solve this. We have to solve it quickly. And they did it in weeks. They got through the pilot and proved that they could do this in weeks after 2 years of failure doing it the old way. So, a crisis is a way to pull people together. And even in current events, and addressing a little bit of a question there, that what I'm seeing, and I know a number of my peers is, a lot of these, we talked about the business case. It's got to be driven by the business case. And traditionally that's been, cost, quality, or some service level metric. Well, now, in the last few months, there's a new metric coming across the line, and it's really around what about resiliency and adaptability. So there's going to be a whole new set of business drivers behind all these projects that are going to, I think, accelerate a lot of this digital transformation and create more of that crisis to say, look, we got to pull together and we need to be able to do this better than we did last time around.
Yeah, some great points there, Mike. And we've been sort of waiting for all these data and all these analytics to start to bear fruit. And so if you think about what's going on right now, is in the beginning, we were getting a little bit more data, and this was really a tool to maybe solve one very specific need. I still remember early on in manufacturing, all the pumps being monitored by an IoT device. And that was sort of the business in the beginning. It was, is the valve open or is it closed? It was binary. And, now we're really seeing a sensor on a jet engine that can measure hundreds or thousands of concurrent pieces of data, enrich that data, analyze it, provide real-time information, and then even interact with the cloud or the data center to provide that data for logging, for further enrichment and analysis and training and learning. It's crazy how much this has moved. And that's why, early on I talked about that ecosystem. Ginger, I want to come over to you because I want to talk a little bit, I've been following the HCE story, and, as we're scaling this out, one of the things that I've been paying a lot of attention to is how does the technology being deployed by OT get out of the sort of closed architectures that a lot of software and tools that have been offered early on have fit into. It's been, if you listen to what the big cloud companies are doing, what the big OEMs are doing, it's all about open architecture. It's hybrid in the stake of how do we bring all these workloads and put the best workload in the best location for optimization. But then a lot of the OT providers said, let's build a software that's very contained. Maybe it's delivered as SaaS, maybe it's delivered proprietary. So as I was being briefed by your chief product officer, Ginger, he was explaining to me how the company's embracing microservices, hybrid architecture, open source, open using Kubernetes and I know this is a big question. Maybe I'm going a little more technical than you would want, and tell me if I am. You can back me out. But what I was really impressed by was the hybrid nature, the fact that what it looks like Honeywell is doing is really trying to build a stack that aligns with the way cloud is being built by traditional IT. Is that making a big difference in terms of helping these companies scale their projects? How is that being received by OT? Because IT wants it, but does OT want that?
Yeah. So I think obviously it all starts with Honeywell Forge. It's roughly a year old. It is that open architecture, as you called out. Another key thing that it has is the extensible object model. So essentially you can easily add on new applications and extend it without having to rebuild anything. So from a partnership standpoint, we're getting both IT and OT that are interested, because as we've kind of talked about, regardless of what industry you happen to be in, people want to not just be in the urea market, focusing on chemicals and industrial. They want to have this tech side. So it has been fairly favorable with select OT companies. I think obviously there's always going to be concern over competition if you're competing head on. But that extensible object model makes a massive difference. And then speaking about, what the grand vision is of Forge, the goal is that you have the predictability, you have the proactiveness, you have the machine learning, so you can ultimately manage your plant or manage your building from a Starbucks, from your home. It's all going to be mobile. And so we want it to be as autonomous as possible, and that makes us more attractive to the consumer. The market responds with kind of how the growth is going and to our partnership potential. And I also think that the question before around good anecdotes, I think the SAP Honeywell partnership is a great one. 25% of buildings have Honeywell. We're rich in that domain expertise. SAP is super rich in finance. We were already a SAP customer, so we started talking to them. It's pretty natural. And then we found this partnership that happened to be very timely with COVID. We can have people coming into buildings, and now if you have to take temperature checks and it takes 5 minutes each and you have hundreds of people, it doesn't have to take an hour, because when you have Forge and the capabilities of IT OT, it becomes more of a seamless process that gets things faster. Or you could even leverage kind of your custodians and focus on the right areas to clean as well. So all of the things that are going to be normal for a new normal is something that it adapts to.
If I may,
I definitely have been watching and admiring the way these big OT and IT firms have found partnerships. I track Honeywell's a really interesting one, and so earlier this year, you guys are doing similar work with quantum. Bringing a big OT company building quantum computers, and then you're seeing companies like Microsoft embracing the hardware. You're seeing how that how the two industries can work together with the ambition of solving problems. Gary, I want to let you weigh in a little bit on this, and I want to pivot because we're getting some questions in the chat, and I think it'd be great to get on some of those questions. But Gary, you're as an analyst, much like myself, but who's very specialized on the OT, IT, and manufacturing IoT space. I'd love to hear from you. How are you seeing this scale? Are you seeing it still scale through OT? Are you seeing IT leading more projects? Sort of what have you seen in terms of how these projects are going from proof of concept, which felt like everything 2 or 3 years ago, to large scale deployments today?
Well, I think you're still finding an IT lead because IT has the problem. I can go back 20 years to the first time I ever heard about this at a large automotive where IT needed information from a machine and figured out a way to kludge a wire. And typically the IT problems with software needs real-time information that's been locked up, and it's locked up in machines and servers and whatever. So there's a lot of lead there that comes out of it because of just the particular problem and business case that you're solving. But now, instead of arguing about who owns what wire or who owns what network or whatever, now it's more like, we have a little meeting, we get together, I've got to solve this problem, I need this data for this and this and this. You need it because you need to know what to build next on that machine. Oh, great, okay, and then we solve the problem. And so I see a lot more of that sort of thing happening. Probably not enough, but I think it's building.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have about 10 minutes left, and when you're managing a panel of 6, I just want to thank all of you for your patience, because 6 people remote and a whole lot of really good insights and trying to get around to everybody. So I want to do a bit of a lightning round to wrap this up. And I want it to be a 2-part question. I want to look into the future, but I also want to quickly pivot off what's happened in 2020. This year has been amazingly challenging, yet, as I suggested, quite the accelerator for a number of digital transformation trends. So around the horn, what I would love to ask each of you is, what is the impact of COVID-19 been on the IT, OT, and IoT projects? How has it impacted the investment at the edge? And then what do you sort of see the next 12 to 24 months looking like? And, I'm going to kind of work backwards from how I just finished. So Brian, you're going to go last. So you'll get to introduce yourself last and you'll get to talk last, but I promise you'll get just as much time. But keep it to about 90 seconds, 2 minutes each. Gary, go first.
First, the COVID-19 thing, I'm seeing a lot of innovation on trying to make the workplace safer and how can we go back to work and how can we do things. But just like safety in machines or whatever, that innovation leads to a lot of other things. And by the way, it also works together with IT, OT, because they each have problems to solve, and the IT needs to bring together all the various technologies. So leave it to a problem to spur innovation is the way I would put it.
Ginger?
Yeah, I completely agree with Gary. It's accelerated innovation. And then in terms of the next 12, 24 months, I think partnership ecosystems is going to continue to have a big effect. You see NASA, Google, Honeywell, SAP. We have a lot of other partnerships in the pipeline. And I think being able to do more with less is going to continue.
Absolutely. You guys are going to go faster than I would thought you'd go, but don't worry, I have more questions. So if you go too fast, I'm just going to keep firing at you guys. I think that brings me back to Mike.
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, it's been tragedy, from a public health perspective and economic perspective, but it's absolutely been an accelerator around business trends. The number of occurrences of onshoring and near sourcing in conversation now and bringing things back in and getting control of the supply chain has just hugely accelerated. And I think businesses, there's a lot of conversations going on around this already, but now it's really come to the top where they're rethinking their KPIs to say, look, things around resiliency, sustainability, those have to come to the forefront. We can't have every project be driven by just trying to get one more percentage point of cost out of things. And if you look at kind of big picture of industrial manufacturing, industrial IoT, we spent the last 25 years, what manufacturing was all about is learn to build something and then spend the next 15 years trying to learn to build it a little cheaper and a little cheaper. So we added a bunch of automation, then we moved labor offshore, then we tightened up our supply chain and we verticalized things. And every one of those steps made us less and less agile. So it made it all of a sudden very hard to pivot when a whole chunk of your supply chain disappeared. You found yourself with years of business setback, creating a whole bunch of innovation, creating a common enemy, if you will. So creating that sense of urgency that is really, I think, so central to really making change management work. If you can get that sense of urgency to say, look, this is what we need to unite the team and get them riled up, and what can we do to innovate and solve these problems and do more with less, because there's not big budgets coming as part of this. So yeah, big accelerator and a big change, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I like that. Doing more with less. That's every manager's strategy. Of course, as leaders, we like to do more with more, but sometimes that's just not the option. So Travis?
Yeah, so I totally agree with everybody here. It definitely has accelerated innovation and accelerated really the need for that data and the visibility of that data with people having to work remotely, especially if you look from an operation, from a SCADA standpoint. Getting the right data to people so they can stay connected, so they can help troubleshoot. They could be remote. Has put a real focus back to mobility. A lot of companies, said, yeah, we want to do mobile technologies, but didn't have the infrastructure, didn't really put the projects or efforts in place to get there. But now, yeah, absolutely, it's accelerated, and looking to be able provide that data to anybody, no matter where they happen to be, and to also ultimately get access to more of that data that's out there. And going back to an earlier question that was that talks about, like, are we looking at a single source, for of a platform to go between IT and OT, or is it multiple? And for us, it's all about open access, open architectures, right? We're not compromised on security, but by having these open architectures, having platforms that we can leverage on both OT and IT sides, that is going to allow this innovation to happen really a lot faster. We can use best in breeds products everywhere. There's not one product that's going to fit the bill for everybody, right? We got to be able to leverage different technologies that exist today and put them together, and that's going to take standards, it's going to take platforms and open architectures to make happen. When we look to the future here, mobility is going to continue getting strong, right? As more and more applications are going to be delivered, through mobile devices, and always on mentality. We're going to see a big trend in shift to leveraging more edge as well, and be able to not only collect data from the edge, but to be able to do analysis and do machine learning and run models at the edge. We're going to see more and more of that happen, and that hybrid between the on-premise and cloud, I think there's going to be huge wins, and scalability that offers, and the computability that it offers is going to be huge.
Excellent answers all the way around. A little more disagreement makes for fun, but the fact that you all agree says that there's probably some opportunity for those listening to see that, hey, a lot of experts are saying the same thing. Brian, why don't you take us home before I add a few comments, and then let Lisa set everybody on their way.
All right, thank you. I agree with everything that's been said. Acceleration of implementation is what I wrote down when you first asked it. It's not just innovation on the manufacturer and software side; it's implementation on the user side. Some of the things I think are going to be happening. Cloud integration. There's been a lot of focus over the last couple of years, and even accelerated now, about getting data to cloud, right? And integrating IT and OT. But once this IT OT integration really is just adopted, accepted, we stop talking about it, we're really going to transition to how are we actually integrating the applications, and whether it's these platforms as a service, and how we actually make use of this data going forward. What are the user journeys that we expect the humans to do as they interact with this? You look at your cell phone, you've got all these different apps. It's a pretty easy way to navigate between them, but does that model really work when you're talking the business applications, and how do we make that interaction more seamless even than the cell phone environment right now? And I think that as we continue to innovate over the next couple of years, we're going to see a new push. As we've gotten data from on-prem to cloud pretty easily, how do we take pieces and components of that microservices cloud environment and get it back down to on-prem for those things that need to execute at edge? And I think we're going to see a lot more innovation that way. So pretty exciting time to be a part of this industry, and looking forward to what the next 2 to 5 years hold.
Yeah, there's no question. We're going to see a lot of acceleration. I don't think there's a lot of debate. What accelerates might be different depending on how work and life is going to function and be engineered in the future by our society. I think you guys brought this up or alluded to it, but I think an important point for the audience to really consider is, we saw this like in marketing, for instance, when the stack started to be sold to marketing more than to IT. We're seeing it a little bit with manufacturing as well, but the buyer is no longer going to be IT for most technologies. IT is going to be the support, and the business is going to truly understand the investment, and then it's going to be this very seamless partnership. The IT industry will, I believe, dictate the architecture, though. The hybrid cloud workload specific architecture that allows workloads to be placed in the right place at the right time, to be able to be enriched, accelerated, managed, shared, distributed, both data and applications. That will be it will be dictated by IT, but the manufacturing or the OT people will actually make for the successful deployment that will take place over time. But overall, I just want to thank all of you. I think what a tremendous panel, a lot of insights, diverse backgrounds, skill sets, manufacturers, influencers, industry analysts, software, hardware, and experts in deployment. So for everyone out there, thanks for sitting in the session. Thanks for attending, Lisa. I'm sure your wrap up will be better than mine. But
that was amazing.
And I'm turning it back to you. Great job, panel.
Great. Thank you all so much. Ginger, gentlemen, fantastic session. We had amazing attendance. For the audience, just so you know, in the next coming days, we will have all of this content and recordings up on our website. So there are other sessions that are going on in parallel. So if you missed one, you can jump in and get the recording from those as well. Thank you all so much. This was an absolutely fantastic session, and we thank you for participating in this great event, and we'll see you next year, hopefully.